On a weekly basis, I get asked a lot of cooking questions, and I answer every one of them. This week, I got a question that took me on a trip down memory lane. Marilyn writes, Melanie, back in the 1970s, my mom made a super easy coconut pie that I loved. Everything got mixed together in one bowl and poured into a pie dish. When it baked, it puffed up, and when it cooled, it formed a thin custard pie. Do you know what the name of this pie is? Marilyn, I not only know the name of this pie, I have the recipe for it. My mother made it for me, and I loved it too. Today, Kitchen Encounters is taking a trip back in time. I'm making 2 retro recipes for you today, an impossible coconut pie and magic cookie bars. Let's get started. Back in the 1970s, Bisquick printed a recipe for an impossible coconut pie on the back of their box. It was called impossible because all of the ingredients were mixed in a bowl, then poured into a pie dish. When the pie baked, all the ingredients went their separate ways. The flour sunk to the bottom of the pie, making a soft, doughy crust. The milk and the eggs formed a nice, creamy, custardy center, and the coconut rose to form a golden top. Sound impossible? Let's bake one and see. I've got 4 large eggs in a nice big bowl, and I'm just going to take a fork and give them a quick whisk, just enough to break them all open and let them start getting just a little bit frothy. It's quick enough. I'm going to add 2 cups of whole milk, a cup of sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, about 2 teaspoons of vanilla, or a tablespoon if you like the flavor better. And next I'm just going to give this a quick stir, just a little bit of a quick stir just to get all the flour down in there. And the fun part about this recipe now is you don't need a stand mixer or even a handheld electric mixer. You could probably do this with a whisk, but I like to get out what I call my granny egg mixer. This is what they used back in the day to whisk eggs to a really frothy state. I've had mine for about 35 years, and if they still sell them, I highly recommend you pick one up. Look at how fast that works. Now I'm going to whisk in a 1/2 cup of melted butter, and I'm going to add 1 cup of sweetened flaked coconut. And believe it or not, I'm going to whisk this right in with the granny mixer too. Now we're just going to get all the coconut out of there. Set that aside. And I'm going to pour all of this into a 10-inch pie dish. And pay attention to that. You do need a 10-inch pie dish. I'm going to bake this in a 350-degree oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. Magic cookie bars became all the rage back in the 1960s when Eagle brand condensed milk printed a recipe on the back of their can. These cookies are made by layering all of the ingredients in either a square or rectangular baking pan, pressing down on them, and then baking the entire pan in the oven. Afterwards, they're cut into bars or squares. That's why they're named bar cookies. Don't make the mistake of thinking that you can take a regular cookie batter and spread it into a rectangular or baking pan and expect to make bar cookies. 99 out of 100 times, they are going to burn and stick. So unless a recipe tells you you can take your cookie batter and make a bar cookie out of it, don't do it. I've got 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs in a big bowl. And it doesn't make any difference if you buy a box of whole graham crackers and crush them, or you buy a box of crumbs. I'm going to add a 1.5 sticks of melted butter And I'm just going to use a big spoon to lightly toss this around. You don't want to turn it to mush. You just want to get the graham crackers lightly coated. See how that is? That's really good right there. I've got a 9 by 13 baking pan that I've sprayed with no stick cooking spray. And I do this no matter the butter you think is going to keep it from sticking. No stick cooking spray makes these bake like a dream. I'm just going to dump, yes, the word is dump, this entire mixture into the bottom of this baking pan. And I'm going to use my spoon to get this all across the bottom as best as I can. This takes just a minute or so, but it's really easy work. Once it's almost across the bottom of the pan, I'm going to add my fingertips. And I'm going to press down across the sides. I'm going to fill in any like open little holes that you see. I've got a 14.5-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. Don't confuse this with evaporated milk. They're two completely different products. And I'm going to drizzle this with the aid of a spoon. And this is going to be the kind of the glue that holds the whole thing together. It's your sugar. This is very sweet, so you're using this basically in place of sugar. Now what I like to do is I just kind of like to tilt my pan a little bit. Hope you can see that. This takes a few minutes just to slowly get the sweetened condensed milk across the bottom. Now I'm going to layer my ingredients. The recipe traditionally calls for semi-sweet chocolate chips, and you really don't want to stray from that. You really want the semi-sweet chips distributed across the bottom of the pan. Now, I've got 1 1/4 cups of chips here, but if I didn't want to add any other kind of chocolate, I'd add 2.5 cups of these. But today, I'm adding butterscotch chips, so I'm adding 1.25 cups of butterscotch chips to my recipe. A lot of people like to use peanut butter chips in place of butterscotch chips. The key is it's a total of 2.5 cups of total chips. On top of this, I'm using walnuts because my mom used walnuts, but you can use pecans or any other kind of nut that you like, as long as they're chopped coarsely. And this is 1.5 cups. And I've got 1.5 cups of coconut. And I'm going to sprinkle that across the top of my pan too. Now, toffee bits are an acceptable addition. I've seen people make them with toffee bits, and I've seen people add some white chocolate to these as well. And once I get my coconut evenly scattered across the top, I'm going to take the heel of my hand and my fingertips, and I'm going to press all of these ingredients down into the crust and the condensed milk. Pop these into a 350-degree oven, and they're only going to cook about 20 to 25 minutes until they're lightly browned across the top and just bubbly around the sides. These two recipes are so much more than just quick, easy, and delicious. They're a great reason to spend time with your children in the kitchen and introduce them to the tasks of mixing, measuring, and baking. It's how I got started. For these and all of my recipes, just go to my website,